Okay, we're just going to wait a minute for everyone to come on.
Hey.
Hey.
Hi.
Hi, Ariana. We're just waiting a second.
I think it takes people a second to get the audio to work. That's
Yeah,
what I was listening.
that's always the hardest part, which is kind of important.
Yeah.
Okay, and Ariana, I'm going to just mute you. I'm muting everybody, so don't take it personally. Okay. Okay, I'm going to get started. As people are coming in, we'll have about 30 people, and you should be able to see me. I'm on the phone calling in because my audio doesn't work. You don't have to have your video on either. That way you can, unless you want to make weird faces at me, that's totally fine. Yes. Okay. I'm going to, my name is Jenny. Thank you all for being here on this cold, chilly evening. And hopefully you're all in your pajamas or something comfortable as we get started. This will be recorded in case you want to go back and watch anything. Okay, I'm going to share my screen now. All right, share. Okay. And I'm going to turn my video off, so in case I make weird faces, which has been known to happen. Okay. Okay. And I'll still see all of your comments too. Okay, there we go. All right, we're going to start. Well, welcome everybody. My name is Jenny, like I said, and I've been working at Dakota County for almost 7 years, 6.5 years. And I have been in the waste industry. As I like to say, I've been talking trash professionally for almost 13 years now. And I just love talking about recycling and composting and trash. And I'm so happy to have all of you with me today, or with me in this class. This is the first class of 6 classes. It sounds like a lot, 6 weeks, but it will fly by, trust me. Before you know it, it will be over, and then you'll be asking me to keep coming back, which has happened. You're class 11. We've been doing this program, the Master Recycler Composter class. This will be our 6th year, and we've been. So you're the 6th year, so you're the 11th class. We do it twice a year, and I want you to know that. Let's see. It might seem like you might get overwhelmed sometimes, you know, being in the world, and you might feel like you're not making a difference, or you're just one person. But I want you to know that we're master recyclers in this class, and there are 35 of you in just this class. We've had it for 6 years, so you'll bump us up into the 250s. So there have been 250 people that have taken this class. That's just Dakota County. There's also Hennepin County, who's been doing this a few years longer than we have. So they have hundreds more people. And Ramsey County will be starting something similar in the fall. And Anoka and Carver County have had a class before too. So that's just the metro of Master Recycler Composter. Then looking nationally, there are dozens of Master Recycler classes around the nation. The first one started in Portland. They've been the oldest, no surprise there. If you know anything about Portland or Seattle, they have the longest running. They've been doing it for, I think, over 15 years now, and they have thousands of people who have gone through their program. So just think that you're one person in one class, but there are thousands of you out there in the nation making a difference. I just want you to remember that, of like you're a part of something bigger, and So it's okay to get overwhelmed a little bit, but know that you're not the only one out there. So going into the mission of the Master Recycler class, this is actually the original mission when they started in Portland. It is, the mission is to bridge the gap between awareness and action by motivating people to reduce waste in their homes and workplaces. And that's really important. The key message there is awareness and action. We're going to learn more tonight when we talk about social behavior change, that people are aware of a lot of things. That doesn't mean that they're going to act on it. And even though they want to, they might not have the ability to, or the willingness, the encouragement. And that's where you come in as trying to get them from awareness to action. So that's what I hope that you will take from this whole class. Expectations for both me as your facilitator and you. I expect you to attend all 6 classes, and that's why I can't, cancel one. Because that's why we didn't cancel tonight. It's such a rigorous presentation schedule that every class matters. Doing your homework. The handbook, which I emailed the first few chapters, and I'll email the next few too. If we were meeting in person, I would give the printed copies to those who have requested the printed copies. Don't worry, that wasn't a trick question in your registration where I said, would you like an electronic or printed copy? It wasn't a trick to say, oh, if you're printed, that's bad, it's paper. Some people just learn better by printed, or like to write on the pages or go back for reference. That's okay. I usually bring a few extra printed copies just in case, because it always happens that someone looks over and says, oh, that's actually kind of cool, I want that. So I'll have a few extra. So do your homework. The handbook, we're not going to have presenters come in and talk about every chapter of the handbook. They're meant to supplement each other. The handbook will go through much more detail of exactly what you should know and background. The presenters elaborate more and give more life and animation to the topic. So that's why it's important to do both, come to class and hear the presenters and read about the background. Be punctual. You will notice when we get to the schedule in a minute that our classes are pretty packed. And so even starting 5 minutes late means that you don't have a longer break, or we might have to skip a break, and it makes it for a long class if we don't have a break. And participate. So my job and your listening, your enjoyment will be much more if you actually participate. Answer questions, of course, be respectful. Ask questions, be respectful. All our presenters love hearing from you, and it's just much more exciting to present to people that want to hear you and ask questions. Okay, our topics. I'm going to go to our schedule here. Oh, that's probably not going to work. Okay. I'm going to share my schedule, and while I'm doing that, anyone have any questions? I want to make sure I don't miss any. Okay. Oh, here we go.
I had a quick question. Did you say you emailed us the handbook? Because I don't see it in my email. Do you know when you sent it?
I sent it early, actually today, or was it today? No, Tuesday I sent just the first chapter. But I will definitely resend it out with all of the stuff we talk about tonight, including the schedule.
Oh, perfect.
So
okay,
no
thank
fear.
you.
Yes, definitely. And who was that? Was that Catherine?
Amanda.
Oh, Amanda, got it. I see that your name pops up. Got it. Okay. I'm going to, too many things open. Okay. So here is our schedule. And you'll notice it's a very mindful way of doing the schedule, where we start with and I'll be sending this out, if not tonight, then tomorrow. And you'll have a printed copy as well. We start with, of course, an intro to waste and the history of waste. We'll go through behavior change. Those first two are really the foundation that we build on for the whole rest of the class. Then
I don't think you're sharing the schedule yet.
Oh.
We're looking at MRC course topics.
Oh, well, that's not very helpful. Thank you.
Sure.
How about now?
Perfect.
Okay, thank you. Yes, please. Don't just let me talk for 10 minutes about something you can't see. All right, so here is the schedule, our course schedule. So we start with a history of waste and social behavior change. We move into prevention of waste, so not having to deal with the waste in the first place. And then hazardous waste. We'll have an activity of make your own cleaner. Then we'll get into recycling. The third week, and I'll be reminding you of this several times, so don't worry, we won't meet. So next week we'll meet in person, hopefully, if all goes to plan. We'll meet at the Western Service Center in Apple Valley. The third week, we'll be meeting in Inver Grove Heights at the Republic Recycling Facility, and we'll get to go on a tour there and have a few presentations there. That's always very exciting. Then we will go into the food, the 2 weeks of talking about food and organics, first on prevention of wasted food, so how to not waste it and why that's important, including how to rescue and food donation opportunities in the area. We'll talk about the business recycling program. I had to kind of stick that in because that's the only time that worked. And then we'll go into the nuts and bolts of composting. So organics processing, large scale site, and then backyard composting. And then our last night will be kind of putting everything we learned together. We'll talk about event recycling, do some how to do Outreach 101, how to make a booth, how to give a great presentation. We'll have graduation and what that all means for you. The last week, I will say, is an optional potluck. Every class is a little different, so this is not like mandatory. You do not have to bring something. I always bring a treat, and usually a few other people do too, and you can definitely eat even if you haven't brought anything. It's just a lot of fun the last evening. Okay, any questions about that? I'm going to share my presentation again. Okay, I'm assuming you can see the presentation. If not, tell me. Okay. All right, the ways that we communicate with each other within the 6 weeks and beyond, there is a Dakota County website. A lot of you might have gone there when you went to register because there's a big registration link right there. But you can see on the left-hand menu there where it says Rural Solid Waste Commission, Vermilion Stewards, all of that. Down below, you can see current master recycler composters. If you click on that, you'll get this page that we're looking at, and it talks about how to submit payback hours, what opportunities there will be in the future on our calendar, kind of the go-to things that you need to know in case you forget. Of course, you can always ask me as well. Then we do have a Facebook group. So after tonight, you'll be invited to the Facebook group. You can also just search for it and find it and ask to join. It's a private group, so only people who've taken the class are allowed to be in the group. And it's a very exclusive club here in the Facebook group. I understand not everyone has Facebook, so it is not necessary for you to be on the group. You'll still get plenty of other information. It's just a way to share articles you might have seen or ask questions, take pictures and share pictures, and everyone kind of uses it a little differently. Then you'll get a monthly email. I don't want to overwhelm you with emails, but the email is it's always from me, and it'll say, you know, the need to know information is right at the top, like here's something that's changed in the recycling world, or pay attention to this, it's spring, we're talking about this event. Then it goes into news that might be relevant in our area that you should know about, not that you have to read all of the news articles, and volunteer opportunities at the bottom. So just things that you should know coming up. Okay, any questions about that? I do want to say I didn't mention it. I thought I had a slide on it. I don't know where that went. So Master Recyclers, the whole point of Master Recyclers is not just to fill you with all of this knowledge and make you confident and educated about recycling, but also so that you're out in the world trying to make change. So part of the whole program is to give back 30 hours of community service related to solid waste. And that's why I thought I had a slide about it. So 30 hours, which sounds like a lot, but it adds up pretty quickly. it's just like if you've ever heard of like the Master Gardeners program. Theirs is actually way more rigorous than ours, where you have to do like your first year, you have to do 50 hours, and then every year after you have to do 20 or 30 hours. Ours is pretty simple. It's kind of a 30 and done. You're always a master recycler if you do your 30 hours. So you'll get a certificate after you do your 30 hours. And we'll talk about at the last class how to log your hours, what that means, how do you make a project, all of the details. So think about what you might want to do for a project, but you don't have to know even by the end of the class. I'm here, I'm not going anywhere. We have 200 other master recyclers that are also, that have done it and have great ideas. And I'm trying to make more room for your engagement in the class. Our schedule is so packed tight that it's sometimes hard to have you guys interact, have everyone in the class interact, because you're always just listening. But I'm trying to squeeze in some time for activities every time, so you can talk to your cohort, and you might have common things that you want to work on. Oh, I did skip something. I did skip this slide. The field trip is May 3rd, and I'll be asking again next week who will be on the field trip to get a better count. Thank you for taking the survey if you did, to tell me if you know that you can make it or not make it. I wish it wasn't during the week. I apologize. Most of the places we go to aren't open on the weekends or in the evening, so I'm kind of stuck. I did, but they're amazing. If you have an opportunity to take off work, or if you don't have work on that day, please come with us. We pay for a bus. We all meet at the Lebanon Hills Visitor Center. We hop on a nice bus. We go to a landfill in Inver Grove Heights. We go to the recycling zone in Egan and get a kind of behind the scenes tour. We go to the mulch store in Rosemont to learn about organic composting, large-scale organic composting. And this one's really cool that we only do once a year, and that is the Anchor Glass manufacturer in Shakopee. So we go all the way out to Shakopee and literally see glass, like melted glass. It's really cool. They make a lot of products for Snapple or Heinz. So that is a very cool place to see. And only master recyclers get to go to those activities. We do tours throughout the year for just general residents, but they never get to see that. Okay, moving on. I'm going to try something. Okay, I've stopped sharing my screen. That's okay. I'm going to try something and see if it works. Christy Otterson is the one who usually does the next presentation, but she couldn't make it today for various reasons. So I want you to tell me if you can see this screen. It says Solid Waste Disposal History.
Yes.
It happened. Good. Thank you. It happens to be that we had a snowstorm last year around this same time. You think you'd dodge it in April, not in Minnesota. So we had to figure out this whole video conferencing last year, but I recorded it. So this is actually Christy's recorded presentation from last April, and we're just going to watch it because she did such a wonderful job in introducing herself, and she's a huge resource for us. Christy is in the Waste Regulation Unit, which is my sister unit at Dakota County. I'm in the Environmental Initiatives Unit. So she actually goes and regulates waste haulers, landfills, but she'll go over all of the other things that she's done. And I just think she puts better words to it than I could. So I'm hoping this works. It's a movie.
Hey, all right.
Okay. Can you hear that?
Thank you. So anyways.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
I would really like you to see me as a resource, given the wide variety of things I'm doing. North for Waste Management, the largest garbage company. I was a manager of the transfer stations here in the Twin Cities. So small trucks came in, large trucks came out. A lot of logistics in garbage. I worked for the Minnesota Resource Recovery Office, which is a state agency, and I was a planner looking at how waste is recycled or reduced in state agencies and other public entities. I worked for Pierce County, Wisconsin, if any of you are familiar with that, just across the river. Ellsworth is the county seat, and there I had the awesome opportunity of actually building a MRF, or recycling facility. And then
The audio went away.
I have also lost audio.
Oh, can you hear me now? I was on mute. I muted myself. Oh, fail. Okay, I swear I said everything brilliant. Okay, so I'll do Christy's presentation since the audio wasn't working. I knew it was too good to be true. So now we're going to go through Christy's presentation. Okay, so Christy, like I said, does a great job of giving this, but I have heard her give it about 11 times. So I should be able to memorize everything, correct? All right, so solid waste. We call trash and anything we throw away, even what we recycle, we all group it under the category solid waste. And that's just our government jargon. So that's just, you might hear that term a lot, solid waste. It's whenever I tell people I work in the solid waste area, they definitely do not associate that with trash. They think about it as working in the sewer department. I don't do that. Nope, solid waste is everything we might throw away or recycle. All right, so one of the best quotes that Christy loves is from her, a book called Rubbish. It's, you know, a couple decades old, but still worth reading. It says, throughout most of time, human beings disposed of garbage in a very convenient manner, simply by leaving it where it fell. And that's so true. We didn't have things that stuck around for 500 years. We didn't have plastics or styrofoam before 100 years ago. Everything that we created was from nature and then could or compost, go back into the ground, back to nature. And there's definitely a lot less of us. So, of course, cities had their own waste problems, but usually if you were on a farm or in a rural area, you could just dump wherever you wanted to because it all kind of decomposed over time. That's changed for sure. So we went from dumping everywhere, wherever we wanted in America, to dumps. And we often call the landfills today dumps, but dumps was actually a term, a very specific term of piles of stuff wherever you could. So here's some pictures of, you know, you might know a farmer down the road and he'll let you dump for, you know, $20. You can dump whatever you wanted in his ravine. Or this picture in the middle was actually on a waterway. You just dump there. No one was using it, so let's just pile some stuff here. And then you'll see on the picture to the right, there's any ravines and arroyos. They're great places to dump for people because you usually can't see, unless you're right up looking down on the hill, you can't see all that garbage. So we went to piles of stuff because we started growing our cities, and the more you didn't want to be next to a dump, you took it out into kind of an area that everyone associated of that's where we're all going to dump our stuff. In the 60s, there's about 1,500 of these dumps, larger than this, 1,500 in Minnesota that were known. I'm sure there were a lot more too. The most common were along places where we didn't use. We might, you know, kind of gasp at using any dumping area near a river or a stream, but if you didn't use that, if you were a farmer or trying to build a city, you wanted land that could be farmed and you could build on. Rivers and streams, you know, although nice, they brought us water, you couldn't do either. You can't farm on a river and you can't build on a river. So that's where our stuff went. And old gravel pits, a lot of times when we were building roads and buildings, we would clear out land, dig it all up for gravel. And then there'd be this huge hole in the ground. Well, that's a great place to dump all your trash. Then we went to burning. So as we got more people around each other, it was harder to find places to dump things. So burning was a sadly convenient way to get rid of all your stuff. Now, again, this was very common, and it wasn't as bad as it is today. Burning today, and it still happens all over. I spent a few years of my childhood in Mississippi, and I definitely remember burning our garbage. But really, before 50 years ago, everything still was organic. It was maybe wood or paper. We didn't have plastics and a lot of the dyes. We didn't have the inorganic compounds, which are really the leading cause of dioxins in the nation now. So we burned all our stuff. That started becoming an issue in the 50s and 60s when we started having more plastics and compounds that, when burned, would release dioxins and other chemicals in the air. So it's kind of interesting. The next slide here will tell us the whole response to our waste issue was never about filling up streams with our trash or litter or anything like that. It was actually a response to air quality. So our first federal response was amending the Clean Air Act, which had passed before any of the Clean Air Act and Clean Water Act passed in the early 60s, and amending the Clean Air Act with the Solid Waste Disposal Act. That's why they're related, because of all the burning. So the first federal law that required some kind of plan of getting rid of households, your home, your commercial, industrial waste. Before 1965, there were no plans. It's hard to believe, that's not that long ago. But we had no plans, no organization with our trash. What normally happens when there's a federal act or policy or guideline, that happens first, and then states enact their laws based on that federal law. So Minnesota, just like other states, in 1969 amended they passed a Minnesota Solid Waste Act. So that stopped it wanted to stop all the open burning. We still have issues with it today, but now it's against the law. Like Christie can actually go out and write tickets to people that might be burning in their backyard, and we have. This Solid Waste Act got us away from dumps and more into sanitary landfills, which is now what we're going to go visit on May 3rd. A sanitary landfill is way more regulated, one of the highest regulated sites for an industrial site. So we got away from unlined, just dumps and fields, to highly regulated sanitary landfill. It also established a permitting process. Before that, anyone could pick up trash from your home, from a business, bring it anywhere, use any kind of vehicle, and that stopped with the 1969 Solid Waste Act. So now you have to be a licensed hauler, make sure your trucks are safe to use. You have to bring it to a regulated site. So that really prompted a lot of cities to start the first trash collections. Now, it might have been before that you might have paid, Bob down the street $20 to come empty your trash once a month or something, or you just brought your trash to the local dump. But this is really when commercial trash collection started. Here's a map, kind of hard to see, but you can see the purple and the greenish dots. The purple are all of the known historic dump sites in the county. And if you start looking at it and you know your Dakota County geography, then you'll notice that they're all along waterways or gravel pits or wetlands. So sadly, those are a lot of where we had our major dumps. Then the greenish yellow is where our current waste sites are, the regulated sites. And we're going to go to one that's at the bottom of the Inver Grove Heights area there. That's where the Pine Bend landfill is. Okay, so the point of the map is also to show you we often hear the myth of we're running out of land, they're shutting down all the landfills. It wasn't necessarily the case. We were shutting down dumps, we being government, were shutting down dumps, but we were building these like monstrous, huge landfills. So it kind of equaled out. So instead of 1,500 dumps, you might have 5 landfills, but the landfills could hold all of that trash equal. Okay, so we go on to new federal act. It's commonly referred to as RCRA, the Resource Conservation and Recovery Act. It amended that old Solid Waste Disposal Act in the 60s. And it really it's the first time we associated trash and recycling with the environment. So before it was an air issue, remember, keeping our air quality. Now it's more of a conservation issue and natural resources. And it's put a focus on reducing waste as well. It's the first time. Just like before, then Minnesota amended our Solid Waste Management Act. So in 1980, we established a state waste management hierarchy, which I'll get to in a second. It created a landfill siting process. So before, you could kind of open up a landfill, and although it was regulated, we didn't really have a process of where it should be. There was no plan. We just kind of we evolved the current sites into what they are. But now if you wanted a new landfill, it's going to be a bigger process. The state act also put a lot of responsibility for management of waste to the metro counties. So it's a little different in greater Minnesota, but for the metro, the counties are very heavily involved in managing solid waste. And the first 2 cities started curbside recycling. So this was, until 1980, no cities in Minnesota had curbside home recycling. So that's pretty exciting. And if you were around then, maybe you remember it. Okay, I'm not going to play this video because I'm afraid that it won't work, but well, I could try it. Want to try it? Let's try it. It is the Marlboro garbage barge, and I'm pausing it. I'm going to share the screen. I'm optimistic we can do this because it's much more interesting to watch a video than me talking forever. Okay, let me know if you can hear this and see it.
Up the garbage. How about the prospect of not being able to get rid of it at all? When a barge full of garbage from New York was turned away from its destination in North Carolina, it set off on a 6,000-mile odyssey. This becomes something of a national joke. The story captivated the nation as the media highlighted a growing garbage crisis.
The barge has quickly become a symbol of this country's growing problems with trash.
The nation's crisis in disposing of solid waste.
Over half the cities in the U.S. will exhaust their current landfills by 1990.
A quarter century later, the entrepreneur behind the barge fiasco remains defiant.
I thought it was a very good idea and still do.
The New York garbage barge raised awareness about what was done with the nation's trash. But what really kept the barge at sea so long? And what's changed since then in how we deal with waste? In 1986, a once successful Alabama builder named Lowell Harrelson was headed for bankruptcy when he heard about an opportunity 1,200 miles away. Islip Long Island's landfill was nearly full, and town officials were desperately looking for a new way to get rid of their trash.
They seemed like they were willing to cooperate, and we agreed to make a test run, one trial run.
Lost video again.
I heard. Okay. I'm just a tease. It must time out. Okay. We will not do that. All right. Well, now that you have a taste of this video, I'm going to send it to you so you can see it. Some of you might remember this, the voyage of the Marlboro. So this barge of trash was sent all around, up and down the east coast of the U.S. Because no one would want it. The port that was supposed to take it decided, oh wait, the media is covering it, now we don't want it. So it went literally up and down the coast, and it ended up close to actually where it started. And it was interesting of how it brought out all these emotions from people. That's really what Christy wanted you to know from the video. People get really emotionally tied to their trash. And if you start talking about controlling anyone's trash or where it's going, all of this emotion comes out. Like I said, I've worked in the industry for 13 years and I've seen it over and over. It's amazing. Oh, someone said my screen isn't sharing. It's okay. There was nothing to see, but thank you for telling me. Okay, can you see it now? The infamous garbage barge. Okay, now I just switched up slides. Okay, moving on. So just keep that in mind of when we talk about, you might question like, well, why do we have these laws? Like, why don't we just do this? People get really defensive about their trash. So with that, I will send that video out to you. Sorry about that. So waste hierarchy. This was what I said before. When we passed in 1980, Minnesota decided to adopt the waste hierarchy methodology. You're going to see this in almost every presentation that we talk about in the upcoming weeks, and that's okay. I want you to really drill it in. The whole theory about the waste hierarchy is an upside-down pyramid where what we should do is on the top and what we shouldn't do or do less of is on the bottom. Of course, this is the exact opposite of what is actually happening. We should start with waste reduction, because when we don't make things, then you don't have to figure out how to get rid of them, and it saves a lot of natural resources. Then we reuse as much as possible by buying used, donating, reusing things around your house. Then recycling is next, which is usually what gets all the attention, is recycling. But really, we often forget about the things we should do before recycling. And we'll talk more about that next week. We'll have a great presentation from Madeline. Recycling is what we should do with the stuff we can't reuse or reduce. Then, along that same line, organics, which is just food recycling. We'll talk a whole session about composting and organics recovery. Then the last three, they're kind of divvied up separate from the pyramid, and that's because anything after that, the dotted lines, is really like it's the end of the life. Like everything above the dotted lines, it's giving something new, it's saving resources. Everything below the dotted lines is really like we've lost the opportunity. We gave up the opportunity, and now we're sending it off. Resource recovery is a fancy term really for incineration. It's a waste to energy plant. So we don't have any in Dakota County, but there are two major ones in the region. There's the Hennepin County facility in downtown Minneapolis that burns trash for energy. And then there is the Newport facility that now Ramsey and Washington co-own. That's in Newport along the river. And I won't talk too much about incineration because it doesn't happen. A lot of our trash doesn't go to incineration in Dakota County because those facilities are farther away, and we happen to have two landfills in our backyard. But incineration is a little different than burning in your backyard. It's a very controlled environment. There's, of course, still air pollutants that need to be trapped and regulated, but at least when you're burning, you are making energy, and that energy is then saving you from having to burn fossil fuels. So not the best thing to do with our waste, but it's definitely better than landfilling. Next under that is landfilling with gas recovery. Now in Minnesota, all landfills are mandated to have some kind of gas recovery system. And that means at a landfill, when we bury things after a number of years, any of the organic material will start to decompose naturally. Because it's decomposing in an anaerobic environment, so without oxygen, then it creates methane. Methane is 20 to 30 times more potent of a greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide. So if that was just all released up into the air from the landfill, methane would get into our atmosphere and increase climate change. In Minnesota, landfills have to capture that gas, and we'll learn about that at the landfill as well. You'll get to see the system. And that's through suction and pipes and this whole mechanism, then that gas can be recovered and used. It has to be cleaned up, but it could be used as fuel. It is like a natural gas, methane gas. It could be used to put back in the power grid, and it does count as a renewable energy in our world. Then, after all of that, landfilling. So landfilling is the thing that we shouldn't do. It's the least desired method of disposal, but sadly it is the way that we dispose of most of our stuff. So you'll see that a bunch more times. Now, the way to really get a handle of educating and talking about our waste and recycling is to know what we're throwing away. So the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, every 5 to 8 years, it's been a while now, does a waste sort, and it's exactly what it sounds like. They have stuff that was dumped at the landfill. They literally go through it, you know, piece by piece, and put it into different barrels, and then weigh the barrels, and that gives you an idea of what we're throwing away. So what does that mean? Here are results from the 2000 waste sort, and then the most recent one, the 2013. So we're definitely due for another one. You can see some major differences in the 13 years in between. Paper goes down, and of course, if I was with you, I'd have you shout out why you think that is. But paper would be less newspaper, more digital. The other wastes are construction waste or miscellaneous just trash that doesn't really have its own category. HHW is household hazardous waste. And this is a good example of, although it might be a very small amount, and I believe that's the 0.4, the little skinny green line on the 2013 results, it's not a lot, but that getting into the environment is much more toxic and has more problems than any of the other items. Glass has also gone down, or it is now. Plastics has gone up. As you can see, we have more plastic things. So we have, if you want to see more detailed of the results, you can definitely go online, and there's a whole document you can read, either a summary or the full report, if you go to the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency Waste Composition Study. And it's fascinating to actually see. You can actually go down and they'll tell you in the paper category, what does that mean? Because paper is actually, they divvied up into 13 different subcategories, cardboard, tissues, all that kind of stuff. Okay. With that, with all of the waste composition, really knowing where we're starting, then the Metropolitan Solid Waste Management Plan was created, and it was adopted we have to adopt it every 5 to 6 years. That really gives a framework for where we want to go. And any of the goals that are here in this table are based on the Pollution Control Agency's recommended goals. Now, in 2014 or 15, the state legislature actually passed a law that said we have to reach 75% recycling by 2030, and that includes recycling traditional items and organics and composting. So, and they based that on what we could have what the waste composition study had. So in theory, recycling, we could recycle up to 60% of all of our waste, and 15% of our 75% could be composted. That's where it's all based on. So we have to report to the PCA, the Pollution Control Agency, every year to say how we're doing on that. And we're doing the 2018 progress report actually this week. We're finishing it up. So you should be getting it next week, or it'll be released to the public next week. We just finished up our Dakota County Solid Waste Master Plan. So it was adopted last September, and you can find that online too. And that really outlines okay, we're supposed to get to 75%. Here's our plan to do that. And that was based on about 1.5 years of stakeholder engagement, surveys, talking with waste haulers, businesses, residents. So a lot of work went into that. And it happens every 6 years that we have to update that. Okay. In 1990, luckily, we had some Minnesota legislation that gave us funding to actually do all of that. So before it was, we had these goals, but then no funding to actually work on recycling education or recycling programs. In 1990, the SCORE legislation passed, and that is it's a silly acronym, don't ask me why they picked it, the Select Committee on Recycling Education. And what that means is every time you throw something away, you're actually taxed on it. So in Minnesota, in the metro area, if you're a resident, you'll have a 9.75% tax on your trash. And as a commercial business, you actually have a 17% tax on trash. All that tax that you paid as a waste hauler, goes to the state. The state then trickles it down to the counties, and the counties also give it to the cities. We use that money to fund programs. We use it to have the master recycler side, or the program, or the recycling zone. So if I was really good at my job, I always say if I'm really good at my job, I could work myself out of a job, because we'd have no trash and then no tax, but it's okay because we'd be recycling everything. So that's the theory behind it. And the theory is to have that kind of financial penalty. So if you made no trash and you recycled everything, you'd be able to avoid that trash tax. So recycling and composting have no tax associated with it. That's kind of a big deal. Now, other counties, Hennepin and Ramsey and Washington, have an additional fee, what they call an environmental charge, a county environmental charge. It's called the CEC. And that money is additional to go to different programs. So in fact, Ramsey and Washington County, it adds up to a 75% tax. And I can tell you that. I live in St. Paul, and it's definitely taxed more, and that goes to more programs and funding. We also have a federal court decision. So this is federal, so nationwide, restricted where things could go. So I'm not an expert on this. I'm going to try to summarize it, but pretty much counties and cities wanted to start saying, okay, we want trash to go to this landfill or this waste to energy facility. And in '94, there was a lawsuit that said, no, I'm a private trash hauler. I'm going to take it wherever I want to go to save money. And then in 2007, there was another legal argument that upheld that. So pretty much what that means is if you're a private trash hauler, a city or county cannot tell you where you have to take that. But unless, there's always a catch, right? If the city or county owns the landfill or the recycling center or the waste to energy plant, then it can dictate where the trash in their county goes. For instance, if you lived in Ramsey County, if you were in St. Paul, before 2 years ago, trash haulers could go wherever they wanted. But now that Ramsey and Washington County bought the Newport waste to energy facility, now they can say all trash in our counties has to go to this waste to energy facility. So because they have the investment and they have the control over it, now they can say where that trash goes. Before, and they could go anywhere. Now, if you do have the other exception is if you as a city have a hauling contract with one hauler or several haulers, like for instance, if you live in Farmington or Hastings, you can actually say in your contract, all of the waste and recycling or all the waste from Farmington has to go to this site. So that's just a for instance. But anywhere else in Dakota County, if you have a private waste hauler, they're going to the landfill, they're going to wherever they're going to save money, really. So we as the county can't say where that goes. We're kind of, because of these lawsuits, that's what happened. So kind of complicated. Again, not the expert, but that's the summary. Okay. All right. So going into that organization of control, there are 3 ways of collecting from your home. First, there's a municipal way. But Farmington is the only city in the county that is a municipal collection. That means the city of Farmington has their own trash trucks, their own employees that pick up that trash, and they have control that way. Another way is similar, where what we call an organized system. So the city doesn't have their own trash or their own employees to pick up trash, but they contract with one hauler to do all of that. Now, it can be one hauler, or it can be what we call zoned or districted hauling, where one neighborhood might have one hauler contracted by the city, another neighborhood might have another hauler, but it's all, you as a resident pay the city, and the city pays the hauler. That's contracted organized trash. The other way is pretty much everywhere else in Dakota County. It is the way where you as a resident, a homeowner, can really contract with anyone that's licensed to haul trash in your city. So for instance, I'll be handing this out next time, but we have some cities that have 15 trash haulers that are licensed in the city. So that's Inver Grove Heights has the most. Inver Grove Heights has licensed 15 trash haulers, and you as a resident could call all 15 of those trash haulers and get prices. Now, what this does, there's pros and cons to both of these, and we're going to get into that more in 2 weeks when we talk about pros and cons of open versus organized. Basically, though, the pros of having an organized system is control. You can tell where your trash and recycling is going. You, as a resident, might have cheaper rates because it's, one bulk order. The pros for an open hauling system is you, as a resident, get to uphold your choice. You use your dollar to vote. So if you don't like your trash hauler, you can threaten them with leaving and go to another trash hauler. So there's pros and cons to both, but we'll get into more detail there in 2 weeks. All right, wrapping up, just facilities across the metro, because there's so many of them. And actually, this needs to be an updated map because something already closed in the last year. There are, although we have county borders, people go, the trash haulers, recycling haulers go wherever they want. And a lot of times, everything is privatized. No counties own a landfill in the metro area. There are 2 counties that I mentioned, Hennepin and Ramsey, Washington, that own their own waste to energy facilities, but the landfills are all private. So that was one of those questions that I asked you in the survey, where does your trash go? And it is most likely going to a private landfill. So there's your answer. There are 4 landfills in our area, and we happen to have 3 of them, lucky us, in Dakota County. We have the Burnsville landfill, owned by Waste Management, owned and operated. The Pine Bend landfill that we'll be visiting, and that's owned and operated by Republic. Then there's those are the 2 that all of our normal trash goes. Then we have 2 specialized landfills that are called construction and demolition landfills. So they're not as intensely regulated because stuff is going there that isn't breaking down as much. It's wood, it's metal, it's more kind of stable materials. We have, there's 4 of those kinds of landfills. 2 of them are, that word is MSW, municipal solid waste landfills. We have 1 transfer station in our county, and that is over in Burnsville, and that's where really I call it carpooling trash. So instead of you driving all the way out to the landfill, you can go to a transfer station, dump your stuff off there, and then they pile it up into a much bigger truck called a transfer trailer, which is a huge tractor trailer, and then that goes to the landfill and dumps. So it's carpooling trash. It's a little more efficient so that not all of the smaller trash trucks are going to the landfill. Okay, a landfill, because we don't often think about this, we just think it's a hole in the ground. This is what a landfill is basically. So you dig a giant hole and you put a liner on the bottom, and it's not like a trash can liner, it's a thick liner. I'll bring it next week, a sample of it, but it's probably like maybe a centimeter thick or a little less than a centimeter thick of plastic. And that goes on the bottom. Then they actually have to do certain layering of piping and clay liner. Clay is really hard for liquids to get through, so clay is often used as a barrier So if there's any liquids in the landfill, it's not going to get into the groundwater. It's going to stop. The pipes on the bottom that you can see in the middle there are meant to capture that liquid, because there will be liquid from a landfill, all that decomposition, landfill juice, or what we call leachate. That leachate drains through and the pipes capture it, and then all that leachate goes to an on-site wastewater treatment facility before it goes off-site. So a landfill they don't necessarily care as much about the garbage. They're not making money on the garbage. They're making money on their airspace. So if you can compact as much as you can into their big hole in the ground, then you're really selling the airspace to get more stuff in. So their whole mission is to compact down as much as possible so that they can make room for more stuff, because that's how they make money. So that's kind of an interesting way to think about it. They're selling airspace instead of selling disposal. You'll see those black pipes in the middle. Those are gas collection wells. Along the whole perimeter and inside the landfill are pipes that go way down, and they actually have a motor that is sucking gases out to make kind of a negative pressure in the landfill. And then that gas is captured and usually sent to either a flaring station, which burns off the gas, changing it from methane, or captures and then they turn it into usable natural gas. Okay. In Dakota County, besides landfills, we have some really other cool processing facilities. We're lucky to have 2 material recovery facilities. Oh, I have a question from Barb. Jenny, do the landfills have a maximum height restriction? Yes, they do. So that top of the landfill, you are permitted by the state and the county to have a maximum height. And it gets really steep. And so the landfill has a bunch of what they call cells. So if you took a whole piece of land, you're not going to fill it all up at once. You dig out a portion of it, maybe the size of, a half a football field, and you are building up on that, and then you close that off and go to the next one and you dig. And so each cell adds up to this whole landfill, or each cell, or a landfill might have 10 cells. And then once you fill all the ground, you start going up, right? So you do have a permitted maximum height that the state says you can get to. Right now, the Burnsville landfill just got approved, or is getting approved, to go higher, because of course they're running out of room. So they need to go, there's nowhere else to go but up, because they can't go out. They can't go any wider because there's a river there, there's the city of Burnsville, so they're going up. But there is a limit of the steep, like how steep it can be. And the state and the county set those maximums. Good question. Okay, so then the processing centers, we have 2 MRFs. That's your fun word you're going to hear a lot. It's material recovery facilities. Don't ask me why we say MRF, but MRF, we pronounce MRF. Or you can just say recycling facilities. We will talk about this more. We'll go to one of them, the Republic facility in Inver Grove Heights and Dick's Sanitation facility in Lakeville. We also have one source-separated organic materials compost site. Don't you love that word? That's really the mulch store in our city in Rosemont. We'll learn more about them. They'll come visit our class. We have 5 yard waste compost sites. Now, only one of those 5 is owned by the city. That's the city of South St. Paul. Hastings contracts theirs out with their waste hauler, Tennis. So really the other 3 are privately owned. Then we have some cool other processing facilities. We have one, if you can see the bottom picture of that big yellow monster there, the machine, that is a shingles recovery. So they're actually putting asphalt shingles through that machine, and it's plopping out the asphalt from them. So that's just like crumbly asphalt. That can be reused into road bays and for other projects, which is kind of cool. There's also a different kind of machine similar to this that, so all of the ash that comes from the Hennepin Energy Recovery Facility, Hennepin County Energy Recovery Facility in Minneapolis. So you burn all of your waste, right? But you still have ash. That ash does come to Dakota County in a special landfill, a construction landfill made for just ash. There's actually a company that thought, or that is making money off of going through that ash to pick out the metals. So the giant magnet is picking up these like little bitty shards of metal that are left over from not burning in the HERC. And they are making a little bit of profit on that. So it's kind of fascinating right in our backyard. Okay, so that is Christy's presentation. If anyone ever sees Christy, tell her I did a great job. She's wonderful, and I hope you do get to meet her. Hopefully she can sneak into one of our classes. Any questions on the history of waste? I'll give you a moment while I change presentation. All right. Christy would be proud. I covered everything, I guess. Okay, well, I'm sorry that you have to keep listening to me for the next part, but it's a fun presentation. The next thing we're talking about, oh, okay, Andrea has a question. Is it true that Buck Hill was a dump site? No, although it looks like it, doesn't it? Buck Hill was just a natural hill. I think they did beef it up and add more to it, but no. And it could have been maybe 100 years ago. Maybe there was some dump history there, but nothing major like what you would think about. And Kelly has a question. Are there any current plans or needs to open up more landfills? Yes. Usually there is a question that comes up of, all right, so when are we going to run out of landfills? And you'll read in your book that I swear every year they say like, oh, we've got another 5 to 10 years. Like that has to run out sometime. Our 2 landfills are the only 2 landfills in the whole metro. Now, of course, there are the waste to energy facilities, but these landfills are going to fill up. It is estimated that they won't last more than that. They'll be closed within the next 10 years. Now, landfills, when they do close, do have to go through a whole special permitting site, and the company that owns them actually has to stay on site and monitor them for 30 years. Now, that might seem like a long time, but 30 years goes by pretty quickly, and then who's left monitoring them? The state then takes over and continues monitoring it for the rest of its life. So when a landfill is operating, like right now, Republic or Waste Management, they pay into what's called the closed landfill fund that goes to the state, and then the state will tap into that fund to monitor the landfills for the rest of their life. There are no plans right now to open up any more landfills in our area. There are plans to open up different kinds of facilities that deal with garbage, like an anaerobic digester or a waste to energy facility, but no, I haven't heard no plans about more landfills. Barb asks, aren't they going to move waste from the old Burnsville unregulated site to the current new one? They might do that a little bit, but I'm not an expert on that one, and I can ask Christy to bring that information back. It's not all of the waste. It might be a little bit, but not the whole landfill. Other questions? Good questions. Okay, let's move on. And you can, if you think of something else, I can always ask later. You can always ask later. Okay, one of my favorite things to talk about is community-based social marketing, which sounds really kind of interesting, like it's a new concept for a lot of people. But it's pretty much saying, you know how marketers are really good at getting us to buy things? Instead of getting us to buy things, social marketing is actually using those same techniques that marketers use, but they're using society to push you to make choices. So community-based social marketing, pretty much just using your friends and family to make you do things. That's what we're going to talk about. So community-based social marketing. Sorry, I had to let my dog out. I tried to stall for as long as possible. Okay, my dog is now out. All right. Social marketing is really the idea is based on these 2 foundations. First, Doug Mackenzie Moore created this book. He literally wrote the book on it. It's called Fostering Sustainable Behavior. A great book, not very long, great to the point, and he updates it quite a bit. He also has a wonderful website where people can share research and ideas about this topic. Then, more recently in 2009, the Pollution Control Agency contracted with Christy Manning, Dr. Manning, out of Macalester College, and she kind of interpreted the fostering sustainable behavior and made it more relatable to use kind of on the ground. How can we actually use this in Minnesota in our area? That's what this presentation is more based on, is the psychology of sustainable behavior. And that's what we'll start talking about. And why psychology? I don't have a background in psychology. I have a biology background, but if I was going back to school, I would definitely get my degree in psychology or any kind of behavior change sociology. It's fascinating. That's really what I do, and hopefully what you do too as a master recycler. You're trying to change behavior, and to change behavior, you need to understand people and their psychology. It's so exciting. So we want to use psychology because we want to change behavior. We want you to be successful. We don't want you to just like talk to, a dead wall that's not going to pay attention. You have to understand where people are coming from. And what we know that information doesn't change behavior. Now, government, I like to pick on government because I've been working in it for so long. Government's really good at making fact sheets, aren't we? We have these great 5 ways to change the world. We're really good at getting information out and just kind of spewing it out to people. But we know now that does not change behavior at all. It raises awareness maybe, but that does not get people to do what you want them to do. So how do we do that? First, we have to start with how we think. Now, going back to old school Star Trek, you might know Spock here. So we think, we do have this brain, our rule-based reasoning system. That is our rational brain, thinking with our head, level-headed, very deliberate. We think that we're using this part of our brain all the time. We're not. To tap into this part of our brain, we have to be very focused, calm, and mindful. We're usually using this part of our brain, our Homer Simpson brain. It's more of our gut. If you think of Spock as your brain, this is your heart and gut. It's unconscious, emotion-driven, you're impulsive, you're using your senses more because you're so second by second, you can't think, you're not being mindful. So it's pretty much everything you can feel, touch, see, and what drives you. We're usually using this part of our brain because it's our adaptive brain. We're supposed to adapt to nature. We have to be reactive. If if you're about to run into a car, you want your Homer Simpson brain to react because it's very quick. Marketers are really good at talking to our Homer Simpson brain. That's why Homer Simpson eats donuts a lot. They taste good. It's impulsive. We're not thinking long term. That's what it's all about. If we were using our Spock brain, we would never have another donut, right? Well, how do we do social behavior change? We need to appeal to both. Like I said, government is really good at information giving and sharing, but we forget that it doesn't really work. So if you look at the picture, we're usually saying it's an us versus them. I'm going to tell you what to do. You need to go do it now. But what we should be doing is the bottom picture where it's me as a part of the system. I'm with you. We're changing this together and making movement. We usually have information-intensive campaigns, and they very rarely work. That, like I said, they raise awareness. You might see a lot of ads for no smoking, but until you actually look at the barriers and the benefits of that behavior, you're not going to reach the solution. And we'll get to that in a second. The other thing that happens for ineffective campaigns is we base things on assumptions. We think because someone feels or has an attitude about a certain way, it drives our behavior. For instance, I know I've been an environmentalist for a long time. I know that I should be carpooling every day, using public transit, riding my bike, and not owning a car. I know all the reasons why I definitely should do that. So that should change my behavior, right? It hasn't. Now I bought a more fuel efficient car and I try to carpool when I can and group my trips, but the barrier is distance for me. So until I can cut down that barrier or improve the benefit of carpooling, my behavior won't change. And that's just an example. So very simplified example, but you have to think about the real life situation of changing that behavior instead of just knowledge about it. Knowledge is great. We definitely need to start from a knowledge base, but there's way more to it. And this is a fascinating one that we often forget, and I hear it all the time, even in our group of recycling educators. We assume that people are only going to do something because of their economic best interest. For instance, we have a business recycling program. We assume when we start educating, because we're not business owners in our team, we're government people, we assume that all businesses will want to recycle more because it might save them money. So we might base all of our messaging on, oh, hey, Joe's business, you want to recycle to lower your trash and save money. What we've actually found is other interests. They might be self-interest, but there's other interests. There's you want to have good PR. You want to be a good citizen or steward. You want to get credit. You want to help your employees. Or you just really do care about the environment and you want your business ethics or your business values to align with that. So we assume that everyone's going to go for something that saves them money or gives them money. That's not always the case, which is a good thing because it doesn't always save you money or give you money in the environmental world. All right, so appealing to both brains. Here is a great example of what government does best. We have a website with way too many words and figures, and it's been shown, I've seen the research, it's fascinating, where they actually track eye movement of people's eyes in a study, and they can actually see where your eyes flow, and you usually, as a reader, won't get past the first paragraph or halfway on the page. And that's really important for us who have websites to make them very simple, bulleted, not all these words, and really to the point. So you're not going to read that. Even if you care, you might skip over. What might be more effective, though, to get your attention and to really move you is this picture. And if I were with you, I'd ask you, oh, what does this picture mean to you? Usually the answers are, it signifies that that the plastic bag fossilized. That's the image. It's not true. It's a graphic that someone made, but it shows that plastics will be around forever. It shows that we were dependent on something that was used for a second and was around forever. It has more of a gut heart feeling than reading that whole web page about plastic bags. Another example of this is from the Doug McKenzie Moore book, one of the best examples. And it's based in California, and I forgot what city it's in. I'll just say Sacramento. They were doing this energy efficient workshop and studying the results of it. They had this workshop for, I think it was 3 or 4 hours on a Saturday. They invited people in, homeowners, to learn about what they could do to reduce their energy use at home. So you're already getting like the low-hanging fruit that are going to spend 3 to 4 hours on a Saturday learning about this. That's like the you guys, like you are taking a 6-week class. You're the leaders in the recycling area. These people wanted to do the same thing for energy. They tracked their attitudes and knowledge. So their attitudes were already in favor of energy efficiency, and their knowledge increased by going to this workshop. So we assume that, okay, great, we got the attitude and the knowledge, now their behavior will change. The evaluation did not show that. 1 in the 40 people that went lowered their hot water heater temperature, which is one of the easiest ways that you can save energy. 2 out of the 40 installed insulating wrap around their hot water heater. 8, so this is a little better, 8 of the 40 installed a low flow shower head. That's great, right? That's a little better until you realize that every single person in the class went home with a low flow shower head. So we even took the barrier out of going to the store and buying one. So what's happening? What's the limitation? That's what we have to ask ourselves. I don't necessarily have an answer for that, but we have to, for this scenario, But we have to understand that just because attitudes and knowledge are with us doesn't mean the behavior changes. Okay. One of the biggest barriers people have in the kind of environmental world of changes is we always feel a little powerless because we're one person. So really speaking to societal change and changing lots of individual people really do add up. And personal changes are gateways to public changes. And you'll see that word normal circled. I'll use this word a lot. The norms of you, of your community, your city, your state, the nation, there are norms that are always evolving. And what we want to do is these small changes add up to big, more public changes. And then eventually we're actually going to get to that point, that tipping point where it's normal behavior. And this is important because it's in our it's in our ecology, our evolutionary biology, where we as a community rely so much on each other for survival that it's instinctual to want to be a part of a group. Even if we think that we want to be way different and individualistic, ask every teenager, they want to be different. We deep down need to be a part of a group for survival. So if you are then going against what's considered a normal behavior, an accepted behavior, you instinctually feel like you're going against the grain and you might want to do something different. Even if you decide to not do the behavior, you have to grapple with that going against everybody else. So what we're supposed to do as you as master recyclers and me as an educator, we're trying to get what we want, the behavior we want, to be that normal behavior so that you're kind of the weirdo not doing it, if that makes sense. All right, so how do we do that? How do we make normal behavior? Here are the 7 behavior change techniques we're going to talk about. If we don't get to all 7, that's okay. They're in priority order to really hit the heavy ones. So first, let's make our desired behavior socially normal. And to do that, language really matters. And I want you to watch yourself even this week of using different language. And I have to check myself all the time. It's fascinating. This is backed up by research as well on many different levels. What persuades you as an individual more? Recycling conserves natural resources and reduces greenhouse gases. Now, maybe that motivates you because you're taking a 6-week class of recycling, but pretend you're, not a recycling advocate. That, or the quote, 98% of your neighbors recycle all they can from their homes. And in this research by Dr. Nolan there, it's shown that the latter motivates people way more. Because now, if you're a part of that 2% of the non-normal people, then you're not a part of the group and you don't want to feel abnormal. Here's some other fascinating research about it, and it's so cool. So I'll just show you one. I won't do the video because we know why. So this graph on the left-hand side where it has X, A, B, and C. Now imagine you're watching a group of people that are in on an experiment, and you go into the experiment, like this room, and you're all sitting in chairs in a circle. And you think everyone is in on you think everyone is just like you. They've been chosen to be a part of this focus group, and they're sitting in their chair, and they're going to be asked questions. What you don't know is you're the only person that's not a part of the experiment, or that's not a part of the scientists, the staff. Everyone else is in on it except you. And this experiment, what it does is it shows that we want to be accepted. So what happens is those people in a circle, they're shown this graph, and the facilitator says, okay, you in chair 1, which one of A, B, and C, what line equals X? Now, of course, if it was just you and me, you would tell me, oh, B, obviously, B equals X. Well, they saw that in the circle of chairs, it depended on if everyone started saying, oh, well, A equals X. It depended where you sat in the circle to drive your answer. Now, if you were sitting like the person who is not in on the experiment, who's being tested, if you are in chairs 1, 2, 3, or 4, then you don't care if the people in front of you said A equals X. You're still going to say, no, these dummies don't know what they're talking about. B obviously equals X. Then they found out anyone above that number of chair, like if you were chair 10 and everyone before you said A equals X, you would say A equals X, even though you know that it doesn't. And that's just a fascinating example of we don't want to be the weird one, the one left out. That's a classic psychological experiment. The other one that I'm not going to show you the video, this is actually done on candid camera back in the 50s or 60s, but they've done it more recently too. Everyone, and you'll think about this every time you're in an elevator, I promise you. If you watch this video, it shows that you're getting into an elevator with a group of strangers. You think you're all, strangers, but everyone in the elevator knows each other except you. Everyone in the elevator is facing the wrong way. So they're facing with their backs towards the door. And after they go up and down, floors and people get on and off. And as people get on, they also face the wrong way. So now you're feeling like, oh my God, what is happening? Why are they all facing backwards? Well, the longer you're in the elevator, they show that person, that's kind of the person not in on the joke, they eventually turn around to face with their back against the door, facing the wrong way. So even in just like fun social experiments, we all want to be like each other. All right, so how do we get a social norm to change? There's actually evidence. Like this is researched. There's many papers written about how to change norms. It's not as easy to do them, but we actually are shown how to do it. We, as humans in a society, we make decisions based a lot on recommendations. What that means is that social diffusion, which is the kind of the social norm spreading, diffusion is something spreading to affect everybody. We need those early adopters, in the bar graph here, the bell graph, the innovators and the early adopters. We need them to try out what we want first, and then we need them to talk to other people. And this is important because you are those innovators and early adopters. You as master recyclers are that top bell graph. You are the start of the social diffusion. And you can see this even not in recycling or anything like that. You can see it when you make a decision. If you've had a pipe burst or you need a new fridge, what's the first thing you do? You might go online. You might start asking friends. One of the things that you'll eventually do, though, if not right away, is you look at reviews, don't you? That's why Angie's List, Google reviews, Yelp, they're so successful because for some reason we rely on people that have gone there and tried it and written reviews. That's pretty cool. So you're that reviewer. We also need the behavior to be visible, which gets a little harder when we're in our homes and the behavior is not visible. But there's other ways we can do that for recycling. We can talk about it. We can recycle in public spaces. We can show pictures and things like that. We can make the behavior visible. We need to ID kind of those early adopters or leaders. That's you, but it's also if you take, let's say, Minnesota and Twin Cities, one of the things that we could do to really move some people is to get a spokesperson or a testimonial from someone that people really look up to. And this can change for every different kind of group. One of the biggest examples of this in the Doug Mackenzie Moore book is trying to get farmers to do more conservation, water conservation on their property with buffer systems. Instead of just going farmer to farmer, they started with a very well-respected farmer in the area and got him on board. And then he was able to talk to his neighbors and people in his farming community. And that changed more behaviors than, a government person just going door to door, because you don't know this person, you don't trust them. Okay, and the last two are just reiterating, you're the early adopter. Okay, so Barb has a question. How does one shake the stigma that if you care about the environment, you are a tree hugger or granola? When I bring my cloth produce bags into the grocery store, I've actually been called one of those environmental gals. So I think Well, Barb, I'm going to talk about that in 2 slides of those trigger words. And you're right, like, so what that means is that the behavior that you are doing isn't normal yet. But because you're an early adopter, you might seem kind of off, like, what's that weirdo doing? But you're showing the positive behavior, and as more people see it and do it, the behavior becomes normal. So we'll talk about words, though, in a second. So how do you make the other thing that you can do for social diffusion is making the desired behavior the default behavior. You can see this at events. So direct proof is something we talk about, like being visually aware of the behavior. So if you see someone picking up litter, that's direct proof that it's important at that time. You can use certain words, and we'll talk about this in a second too. So descriptive norms are the technical term for making the behavior, describing it in a normative way. So instead of saying you, you say we or our. You say, depending on what group you're speaking to, for instance, if you're talking to, the third quote here, if you're talking to a church, a Lutheran church, then you say the majority of Minnesota Lutherans, that brings you together as a group. That means that if you want to be accepted in your specific community, you should do this behavior. Now, sometimes this doesn't always add up. Like Barb was saying, like 90% of people don't use their reusable produce bags at the grocery store. So you can do a little looser, like many people are starting, or instead of a percentage, it might seem like a bigger number because humans we have no concept of numbers, right? 90% is huge. Well, if it's 90% of 10 people, that's really not a lot. But instead of using percentages, you could actually use numbers if it sounds like a lot. Like 200 people have started using their produce bags at the Cub Foods down the street. Now that might be 200 people out of like 10,000, but you don't say that. You say 200 people because it sounds like a lot. It's our little secret. Positive cues, and that's positive reinforcement. If you have any children or maybe a husband that you really want to encourage a behavior, you say thank you for blah, blah behavior. Thank you, honey, for emptying the dishwasher in a non-sarcastic tone. So it might seem silly, but that thank you really goes a long way. For instance, in my, at work, they know, of course, I'm the recycling gal. And so they're, whenever I'm in the kitchen area, they always kind of know I'm there. Even though I'm not paying attention, they know I kind of am paying attention if they're going to recycle something. But if I hear that clink of a glass in the recycling, or I know they did it right out of the corner of my eye, like I'll give them a high five, like, hey, thanks for recycling. And they might like roll their eyes at me, but that does have an effect, that positive reinforcement. Also, something that's a great example of this for direct proof and positive reinforcement is one time I was picking up litter in a park, right? I was going on a walk with my dog, and I decided to be the proof, the visual, I wanted the example of the visual behavior I wanted other people to do. So I picked up a piece of litter. Now, what someone else was doing, they, ran by and they said, hey, thanks for doing that. Now, it's funny that I was trying to be the visual cue, but they actually did the social norm pushing of thank you for doing that behavior. So we encouraged each other. And then anyone else who saw that, like maybe someone passing by said, ooh, I want to get a good compliment. I want to do something good. Oh, that's great. Creating and supporting networks that spread examples really does help social diffusion. And that is you as well. So you are, a part of the 250 people that have taken the Master Recycler class. You are a supportive network, and you also have networks that you're a part of. That's why when you first registered, you had a question of what other groups are you a part of? I asked that specifically because you don't have to, when we talk about payback hours or reaching other people to educate them, you don't have to go any farther than your groups that you're already a part of. If you're in Master Gardeners, if you belong to a church group, if you are a Girl Scout leader, you can reach those groups and be that social diffusion by doing things you already are involved with. Okay, and then reinforcing that norm that it's for everybody. It's not the weird thing. So here's some great picture examples. Here's direct proof. This is, I stole this slide from Madeline Chochi at the Pollution Control Agency because she had a great slide of this. So every Earth Day, the Pollution Control Agency does a litter cleanup. They pick up litter, it's great. There's a field next to their buildings. They get a lot of litter blown in. But not only that, not just showing that we as employees at the Pollution Control Agency value this and want to give back. The PCA commissioner at the time, which is the guy in the bulk cap in the other picture, he's out there. So now he's showing, as the commissioner of the whole, like the director of the whole Pollution Control Agency, is saying, this is what I value in my employees, and I'm going to show you by being that example. And that reinforces your behavior if you signed up to pick up litter. Like, okay, this is expected. This is the norm at the Pollution Control Agency, and I'm a part of it. One other example, one of the biggest leading causes of someone to put solar panels on their roof isn't the price, it's not the energy savings, although that does help. It's if someone else has solar panels on their roof in your neighborhood. And that's the social diffusion. You might ask them questions, so now you have the recommendations, the proof that they work. But to get that, you need that first person to do it. So those are those early adopters. Same with this. This is just another tactic of showing a normative behavior. And we'll talk about how the behaviors that we want people to do are sometimes invisible. They're not visible, or that I just said the same thing, but they're not visible to the human eye. You can't touch, feel, see them like our Homer Simpson brain wants. So you use other kinds of cues to show that you're doing the behavior. Obviously, if your lawn is pesticide free, there's no way I'm going to know that if I'm just walking by. But because you put this yard sign in your yard, I would know that, and I would accept that as like, oh, that's pretty cool. I wonder, how do I find out more? And there's answers. Here's more of those descriptive norms that I talked about and why they're so important. This is a pretty common one now. I was just visiting, I was in Duluth at a hotel, and I saw this at their small hotel. It's everywhere now. I'm sure you've seen them in hotels, of these little tags saying, hey, we care about the environment. Will you help us? Now, of course, they're doing it maybe for their own bottom line, or, staffing to not have to change rooms. They're saving money. That's great. If they want to use the environment as their example of like, we're doing it for the environment, more power to them. They're also saving money too. Now, one of these tags, it does say, every day, tons of detergent and millions of gallons of water are used to wash towels that have only been used once. This hotel is committed to conserving our Earth's natural resources. Great descriptive norm. A towel on the rack means I'll use it again. A towel on the floor means please exchange this towel. Now, if they added the wording, most people reuse their towel at least once during their stay, the amount of towels that were reused increased 26% by stating that. Because you're saying most people, like, you'd be the weirdo not doing it. Then, I think this one's kind of creepy, but it worked. Most people who have stayed in this room reused their towels at least once during their stay. It increased another 33%. And that's saying that the norm of this room is reusing your towels. If you don't do it, you're not in the society that believes that you should reuse their room. You're the outcast. Okay. Make sustainable behavior personally relevant. Here's where we're going to talk about words to get to your answer. Really, we often forget when we're talking about recycling and composting and public transportation, any of that kind of stuff, we forget that other people aren't like us, right? I'm sure you've had these arguments or discussions with other people, friends and family. We want to, first, before we speak, we want to listen. We want to understand who we're talking to, because if we don't understand where they're coming from, we can't use their own motivations to get them to do what we want. And the only way to know people's motivations is to learn about them. So what's their worldview? Are they religious? Do they have children? Do they Are they in certain groups? Maybe they are in, I can't think of anything now. Maybe they work for a corporation. What do they care about? Are they bikers? Or do they have dogs? Knowing more about them, then you can use that to influence them. And you can't just assume like, oh, all of these people in this church care all about this. You can't just say that, right? Every church is different. Every group is different. So you actually have to do that research. And doing research oftentimes is talking to people. So then we have, this is where the words come in, the trigger words. We try, and I still fall for this, we try not to use the word the environment. We've shown over and over again in research that the environment makes it an us versus them. The environment is over there. I don't live in the environment. It's some, wild place. So saying our water, air, land, our neighborhood, then it makes it a part of our lives. I have to constantly catch myself to use this. And I might use the environment, talking to you because I know that you're signing up for something that does protect our air, water, and land. So we're probably coming from the same place. But in the general public, when I'm writing things, when I'm doing a presentation, I really stay away from the words the environment. Because it really doesn't mean anything to most people. Then there's those trigger words. Barb, you mentioned one of them. Tree huggers, environmentalists. So if you talk about the environment or kind of what's still seen as not normal, you're seen as not mainstream or an obstructionist. You're seen as like the problem. Instead, we need to make ourselves a part of the everyday world. Now, we might even see ourselves as tree huggers. Like, I'm fine with that. I don't care. But if the majority of people we're talking to, our audience, feels that tree huggers are bad, we don't want to use those words or make ourselves look like that. We want to talk about being a citizen, a concerned resident, talking about the water we drink, the air that we all breathe, the ground that the kids play on, our kids play on. Really talking about that makes us a part of the community instead of isolating us and making us seem different. We're just like you. We just adopted some great new behaviors. Try it out. Here's a fun one. Here's going back to our Homer Simpson brain. If we can't see, smell, touch, or taste something, we often have a hard time perceiving that. And then if we can't perceive something and be mindful about it, how on earth are we going to change our behavior? So we need to make that invisible information visible. And there's some really cool creative ways to do this. Of course, props. When we talk about booths later on and presentations, I always use props because it's great to visualize. So we're all on the same page of what I'm talking about. Here's one that the Pollution Control Agency did. I just love their picture of it. They went to new printers, and we have them in our office too now, where you have to scan your badge to then release the project that you sent to the printer. It's, gone are the days where you just send something to the printer and it prints. Because what happens is, when we used to do that and you just send something to the printer and then you run off to a meeting and you forgot to grab what you printed for the meeting, there's piles and piles of this paper that was unused and just left at the printer. So how do you say that? You can't just describe to someone, oh, we saved 500 reams of paper. Instead, at the Pollution Control Agency, they actually piled up the amount of paper that was wasted. Like, it's not the actual paper, but this much total paper we wasted last year from print jobs that we left at the printer. That is a much bigger visual cue that we wasted a lot of paper than just saying a statistic. Another example, this was at the Pollution Control Agency's Eco Experience building at the State Fair. I believe this was 2013. And what they did, they made a wall of plastic bottles, and I always forget the statistic, but it's like how many plastic bottles are used in like 30 seconds in America. So you can see it kind of winds around into this big hallway. And then if you see on the right-hand side, there's like a red line kind of halfway up. Everything underneath that line is the amount of bottles we recycled in that same time period. You can see, like, visually, instead of saying like 90 million bottles, you can actually see a representation of it And that will stick with you more than numbers because you can see it, you can feel it. Another way to reveal hidden information has been very effective. If anyone has a car that does this, the first ones to do it was actually the Toyota Prius, and now a lot of cars have it, whether they're hybrids or not. There's actually, I haven't seen actual research on it, but the theory is that there's been more gas savings, not from the hybrid car itself, but this feedback mechanism. So if you've been in a car with this or you own one, you can actually track your fuel efficiency as you go, and then you can kind of brake or push on the gas in different ways to lower that or raise the fuel efficiency, use less gas. That's been the theory that's been shown to reduce gas usage even more than the hybrid engine. Another way is when we talk about composting, like this is Nancy Lowe on the left-hand side. She works at Hennepin County. They did an event where they collected composting, like everything. They tried to make everything compostable. They collected it all. But how do you really describe that? How do you show that this stuff went to composting? Well, they actually had, at a different event, a large pile of compost and put a sign there saying, this was once food and now it's compost. To actually connect that, what we did previously affected what we're doing now. Last one of this is kind of using that social norm with revealing hidden information. This is pretty common practice now with your utility bills. I'm sure you have it, where you get your utility bill and it shows what you're doing, all your neighbors, and your most efficient neighbors. And it is based on real numbers. I've had that question asked for me before, like, are they just making that up to make me more efficient? No, it is based on actual numbers. So what they've seen is by doing this, it makes you the outcast. Like in this example, you waste way more energy than your neighbors. So you want to reduce that to get at least into the all neighbors. Then, if you're even below the efficient neighbors or you're less than the all neighbors, what they found actually was you were then also isolated from being kind of the opposite outcast. You were being more efficient. So it was shown in studies that you would increase your energy usage to kind of either to be more normal or to say like, oh, I could use a little more, everyone else is. So what they did to counteract that was actually giving a positive phrase or even a smiley face, like thank you for being super efficient, to reinforce that positive behavior. Did not work though when they tried to do a frowny face for the wasters. Don't want to do that. Okay, fostering mindfulness. Mindfulness kind of goes against everything that we're programmed to do. So here is a beautiful picture of happy puppies. Now, if you were ignoring me for the last 20 minutes because you're zoning out, because it's late, you're tired, you already ate, now I probably got your attention because there's adorable puppies on the screen. That is being mindful, stopping someone from their normal routine, kind of drifting, daydreaming, thinking into being very present, like shocking them into being present. And there's different ways to do that. Surprise is one of them. This is an artwork piece, a graphic design piece by Chris Jordan, who does a lot of these pieces. And if I was with you in person, I would make you guess what you think it is. I usually hear pipes, a circuit board. This is the main one. Well, what Chris Jordan did is he took a sample image of cups stacked into each other, and then he repeated that image over and over and over again to make this. And this whole graphic here represents the amount of disposable clear cups that are used on airplanes in the US every 30 seconds. That's a lot. Another way to foster mindfulness are prompts. Now, prompts only are helpful until you ignore them. Like you'll see the prompt maybe for the first 10 times and then it kind of dissolves back into the background, but they're really good to try to get you into the behavior you want the first 10 times you see it. Prompts only can work if the prompt is about the behavior that you want to do, close in time and proximity to the behavior. So this one, here's some good examples. Let's start with the shop with bags. So this is hanging from the rear view mirror, shop with bags. So it's the prompt to try to get you to remember to bring your bags. So the hope is that you sit down in your car, you see this, at least for the first 10 times, and it'll prompt you to go back in your house and get your bags if you forgot them. A better prompt would maybe be at your house, wherever you leave your bags, but maybe this is a helpful prompt even to leave your car with your bags so that you don't walk into the grocery store without your bags because you did such a great job remembering to bring them. The other one, so it's in close proximity to the desired behavior, your bags are nearby, or the time that you need to use them. The other one is these come from trees, which is a sticker that you can actually use. You can get this, you can actually, if you Google that phrase, you can actually print off these stickers. And the whole point of the stickers are to kind of put them on paper towel dispensers. And by doing that, then you are close to the time of using paper towels. And it's a reminder like, hey, wait, these paper towels actually came from living trees. And why are you using 20 of them when you only need one? So it's close in time to when you're going to use them and where you're going to use them. Prompts are great. Another fostering mindfulness is to be the positive force to reinforce that behavior that we want. I will say this over and over again to you.
Do others have audio?
But she dropped.
She has to reconnect to her phone and get that powered up.
Hi, all. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. Oh my gosh. Okay, that's signaling to me of like, wrap it up, Jenny. Your phone doesn't even want to let you talk anymore. Okay, we're almost finished. Thank you for being patient. All right. We're going to get to, okay, so commitments, which are basically pledges or writing out what you're going to do. And this will be the last one I talk about. So fostering mindfulness is really making people stop in their footsteps and making them think about their behavior. And the great thing about commitments or pledges is smaller pledges add up to larger actions over time. And it reinforces people's self-perception, so how they see themselves. So even if you might not completely believe you're a great recycler, by writing something down like I will recycle more, you're actually telling yourself that perception, and you want to live up to that. Okay. So using commitments are actually one of the easiest things you can do, and they're kind of fun. And I'm sure you've seen them all over the place. Different commitments or different pledges are verbal, written, even drawn out. Written pledges are more are more efficient than verbal, like just saying, I will do this. Writing them down makes you more mindful. Making it as a group commitment or pledge is also very helpful. And then, let's see, making a commitment or pledge in a way that is as specific as possible. So this one is an online pledge. So online isn't as effective because you can easily just click things and you're not as accountable. But this is a pledge for road safety. Like, I'm going to be a part of this this pledge drive for keeping people safe. So you can add your pledge. What's better is if you are writing it more specific to your life. Like this one, I've seen this a lot now, where you go to a booth, like at a farmer's market, and you can take a pledge and you're specific of what you're going to do. And they might take a picture of you and then put it on their Facebook page, or you're supposed to put it on your Facebook page. And what that does is it's one, making you be mindful of what you want to do or say. Then it's also using social diffusion to get into your networks and your own networks to say, like, this is a normal behavior. This great person is doing this. Another way, this is another online pledge. Here's a group pledge example. So this is at a school. Every child had to like make their drawing of their hand, cut it out and put what they were going to do for Earth Day for a pledge. And they learned about different things they could do to help the earth. Another great one I've seen is actually writing a postcard, and you say, like, I'm going to do this, and you make it as specific as possible. Like, I'm going to stop using produce bags. I'm using Barb as an example. I'm going to stop using produce bags starting in March, starting at the next time I go to the grocery store. By being as specific as you can be, you're much more likely to do that behavior. So just saying, I'm going to stop using plastic, that is overwhelming and not helpful. Like, once you actually start looking at it, plastic is everywhere. So if you can make a very specific change and associate it with a time or an activity, you're much more likely to do it. Okay, I promise this is the last one, because it's so important. No one wants to feel dumb. No one. None of us want to feel dumb. So we want to make people feel smart and confident about the behavior we want. To make someone feel like they can compost right, then we want to make it easier for them. That's why one of my presentations for Composting 101 is actually called The Lazy Guide to Composting, because it makes it seem like anybody can do it, and they can. We don't want to complicate things. We want to be very clear and communicate respectfully. This is important when you start getting into, like, if you're going to do a booth or you're going to do a presentation or just talk to people, you might start getting overwhelmed and like, why don't all these people know this? We really just have to break it down into simplicities, and I'll reiterate that for every presentation we're going to hear about, and how we're going to get back to making it simple. This is one of my favorite examples of creating competence. one thing you can do is practice behavior to create a competence. What the Metro Transit found out in the Metro Transit Authority found out is people weren't using the bike racks on the front of buses because they felt dumb. They didn't know how to use them. Like they're not intuitive to use. And you don't want to figure it out when like 30 people on a bus are waiting to get to work. That's not the time you want to figure out how to use the bike rack. Because you don't want to make people late. You don't want the bus driver to get annoyed. You just don't want to cause any issues. So what the Metro Transit did is they took the bike rack that's usually on the front of the bus, they took it to events that would have bikes at them. They took it to the state fair. They actually set up 2 of the major bus hugs. They put this bike rack there and you can practice. That's actually the first time I ever learned to put my bike on a bike rack was at one of these events, because they're there to help you. You don't feel dumb. You can ask silly questions if you want, and they make you feel confident. They also did a lot of videos and showed you how to do it online and on Facebook and congratulated people. It provided a great practicing the behavior. We can do this also with recycling. If we're at a booth or something, I always have props and I have people put them into the right containers. So you have that kind of muscle memory and confidence building. Okay, I promise, and for creating competence, these are actually master recyclers, and they're at an event. And master recyclers, you're going to be asked to do several events, not that you have to ever do them, but a lot of our helping people is at events where people might not be as comfortable with recycling, that they're not there at the event to recycle. They're wanting to have fun, and we have master recyclers there to make sure that they feel confident and they know where things go. And if they do it wrong, then as they leave, we can change it. Okay, that's the last slide I'm going to talk about. So with that, thank you all so much for bearing with me. We had a crazy evening, and hopefully I get to see all of your wonderful faces next week. For homework, I know that for the people who wanted to print a printed handbook, you won't have that before next week. So I'll be sending around the electronic handbook again. Please read chapters 2 and 7. Chapter 2 is all about waste reduction and reuse, and chapter 7 is about hazardous waste. That'll prepare us for the presenters next week, Madeline Chochi from the Pollution Control Agency and Laura Villa from our county office to talk about hazardous waste. And starting today, and it's okay if you already recycled your mail, but I want you to collect all of your mail for 1 week. And you can either bring it all in with you next week or weigh it in some way so that we can kind of get a count of how much all of our week's mail is. So that's mail. We're going to collect all mail, even if it's stuff that it's not junk mail, because everyone has a different interpretation of junk mail. So we're just going to collect all mail. So with that, I will see all of you next week. Do you have any questions right now before we get off? Someone asked, does that include packages for your mail? No, you're right. That does not include packages, just regular like envelopes and flat mail. Good call. Unless you want to bring me presents from your packages, I'll accept them. Okay, thank you all so much. I look forward to meeting you in real life next week and hearing you talk. Thank you all. Have a great evening.